when you look at these images, are you moved?
Yes.
Some of you might be sitting there thinking, not really. Maybe even squirming at the expectation that you should. And I need to tell you today that whichever group you fall in, whichever group, you can assist the many victims of domestic violence. Domestic violence involves ongoing patterns of coercion, control and domination. Victims are usually fearful, intimidated, they're often confused. Why is my loved one treating me like this? Physical violence can be a part of domestic violence, but other forms can be just as devastating. Sexual abuse, financial abuse and emotional abuse are examples of this. So why help? In terms of animals, you might know, there's 61% of Australian households that contain pets, and most of those are considered family members. As family members, the animals are often targets of domestic violence. There is an estimated 300,000 animals a year in Australia affected by domestic violence. Many will end up in an animal shelter, and which we know animal shelters are often overflowing. They're often underfunded. There's not usually enough people willing to adopt or foster the animals, and so otherwise healthy animals are at risk of having their lives cut short because of euthanasia. International studies have shown that sentient animals such as cats and dogs have thoughts, feelings and meaningful connections with others. They can feel stressed, anxious and depressed. In a 2014 TED talk, Laurel Braitman studied the rise in the number of animals being diagnosed with a mental illness. She was focusing on military dogs on the front line, but also animals traumatised through captivity, through zoos and animal entertainment parks. She found that medication for, say, depression, anxiety and compulsive disorders could help alleviate the symptoms. Pets in domestic violence may also need that help, along with our love and support. In terms of people, you might know that domestic violence in Australia and internationally, it's a major social problem. One woman, on average, a week in Australia is killed by an abusive male partner or ex-partner. The 2018 figures show that 1.6 million women in Australia have survived violence. But there are other victims. There are children and young people, people who are gender or sexually diverse, and a smaller group of heterosexual men. We know from international studies too that domestic violence is linked to animal abuse, child abuse, and elder abuse. That people who hurt animals are much more likely to hurt people and much more severely. Domestic violence occurs in all walks of life. If you haven't already come across it in the course of your lifetime, you're likely to. You or someone you care about is likely to be affected. If you were to scan across this room right now, you would see people who've survived domestic violence. You could say that we're hidden in plain sight. Domestic violence can go unnamed and unnoticed for lengthy periods of time. Sometimes that's because victims carry the hope of their abusive loved ones changing. They want the violence to stop rather than the relationships to end. It can be scary calling a loved one abusive. Often it requires decisive action that can be hard to turn back from. Many victims feel scared that they're going to be blamed, shamed or hunted down if they leave. They might not tell you about the abuse or the extent of it. It may not be because they don't trust or love you. It might just be because they don't want to burden or shock you, or they don't know how to tell you. We know from studies that 50% of the women with pets who are in domestic violence situations either delay or refuse to leave if they can't go with their animals. And one of the reasons is that these animals provide them with unconditional love and support. Many victims have reported that their pets or their animals give them the will to live, a reason to get up in the morning and keep going. So how to help? The first tip I've got is ask about the animals. Ask how they are. Is there anything unusual happening with them? Are they behaving differently? Are they hiding? Are they nervous? Are they trying to escape? This can be really protective for the animals, but it can also be a bridge into human experiences, human disclosures of abuse. Offer practical support. If they need to make an escape plan, help them with that. Look into pet-friendly accommodation and pet-friendly taxis if you haven't got a car or they haven't got a car. And if that's not possible, maybe look into your local area fostering arrangements for animals. If you love animals, and some of you do, I know you do, offer to help them. Offer to care for them at the time. Maybe even offer to take on other animals in need from the shelters, because the more rehoming we can do of animals, the less guilt human survivors need to feel if they've had to flee without their animals. Help reunite missing pets with their humans. Post on social media, contact your vets, the pound and animal shelters and see if they're there. That can be a really important experience for everyone. Appreciate that moving is exhausting and expensive. If you can, help out with practical things like bedding, meals, pet food, furniture. Expect challenges post-escape. It's really tempting to think that when victims are safe, that their life will dramatically improve. You think, okay. But actually it can be when they're safe that they can be flooded with emotions, have flashbacks, panic attacks, and they can also, human victims at least, are also likely to have to face a whole series of other challenges relating to custody disputes and property settlements. As the law currently stands, animals can only be listed as property. Help grow pet-friendly accommodation. This is really important because the greater number of animals and human victims that get to relocate with each other, the more they have the chance to nurse each other back to health. So you don't actually need to love or care about animals to help the many human victims that do. And conversely, if you really love animals, and maybe people not so much, you can know that by helping people with their animals, that'll go a long way towards the protection of animal rights and welfare. Because as Abraham Lincoln is quoted as saying, I'm in favour of animal rights and human rights. That is the way of a whole human being. Thank you.